The domestication of human civilization. That's what I see when I see videos like this. Elijah Schaefer tweets, gender nonconforming girl cries because her grandma won't call her Mike as she requested. The grandma is super nice about it, writes a personal card, and says she's excited to see her still. Yet she cries for 2 minutes that she won't call her a dude's name. Just chill, fam. Let me play for you this video, and I'll talk about what I mean by the domestication of humanity. It is the fragility of these individuals. They are so deeply fragile that one individual saying, I'm not going to call you that, results in an internet cry video. Now, I feel bad for this person. I really do. And I'll tell you what I think this person needs. Help. Legitimate help. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I think this person needs a strong guiding force in their life, a strong mother to tell them, here's how you will find happiness. And a father says, the only thing I ever wanted for you was happiness. And let me help get you there. Instead, you have parents who refuse to guide their children, resulting in confusion and sadness. Even this person's grandmother is doing the bare minimum. Here's the video. Let's hopefully it plays.
Hi. So recently I texted my parents because I'm gonna go home for Christmas, and I said, hey, do you mind calling me Mike when I come back for Christmas? And then when I got home today, I got this letter from my grandma, and it is addressed to Miss Old Name. Not actually, but I don't want to say my real name on the internet. Dearest dead name. On this, our Blessed Mother's feast day, I am writing to tell you that I will not address you as Mike. My decision is probably not a surprise to you. Others may comply with your request. My anguish in your chosen name and what that means has to do with your eternal soul. Know that I love you more than words could ever possibly convey to you. No matter how you decide to identify yourself does not change my deep love for you, honey. Because of my concerns for your soul and your mental health, I am spending more time with Jesus in adoration. My cousin's last names are doing the same for you. Then she lists my 5 cousins that are below the age of 10 who are apparently offering up special personal sacrifices for me, who I didn't tell that I wanted to go by Mike. I didn't want to. I haven't talked with your godmother and her family, but I'm sure they would do the same for you. Do you know how much you are cherished and loved? It would be a joy to see you and be with you during the coming Christmas, a celebration of our Lord's birth.
She cries for nearly 2 minutes because her grandmother says, I love you, I want to see you, but I won't call you Mike. Why? Why is she crying? I just don't understand. I mean, I guess if I was going to give you my personal perspective, I would say that we are failing this generation, and it's a degeneration from the previous generations. Excuse me. I suppose I could blame boomers to a certain degree, but not all boomers. I actually think boomers are fairly great, but there wasn't enough, what's the right word? Strength. So we go back in time. The greatest generation. Men and women who fought world wars, more than one. And I think mostly refers to World War II. But there were individuals who were, of course, fighting in both. These are people who did what they had to do. These are people who survived the Depression. And it was tough. And here's what happens. Hard times make strong men. And from this, these strong men fought a war. They won a war. The women in their lives stayed home and they worked factory jobs and they maintained the system while the men were away. Not all men, of course. There were still men involved. Some women were in the war effort, mostly men. Many men stayed behind for many other reasons, community functions. Some were older and couldn't fight, things like that. From this, they come back carved out of stone from previously having been wads of cookie dough. Not all of them, but I think they were forced to, and they were hardened. And they come back to this country and they say, I have seen things that would make your blood curdle. And so they fight back at home for a better life for their families. The jobs they do are nowhere near as grueling or taxing or terrifying as the war they faced. And so they lead the charge and they make the world a better place for their families in this country. Their children grow up in prosperity, but their children also end up then seeing some war as well with Vietnam. And that shatters the minds of many of these people, leading some to resist, and that was the fault of the government. These are, I suppose this was the boomer generation. You have the greatest, the silent, the boomer, and they kind of, wave in and out. As the generations age on, what happens is the loss of generational wealth, as I perceive it. That is to say, you have an ancestor who works really hard and they generate wealth. You inherit that wealth, but you don't know the hard work it took to make it. You have a child. That child inherits that wealth as well, and they learned no lessons from you because you had not learned those lessons yourself. And that's why they say wealth lasts 3 generations. It is the wealth of a nation, the fourth turning. Individuals now crying. Why? Well, not because their mother died of dysentery, not because their brother contracted cholera from drinking from a river, not because a rattlesnake bit their ass and killed them on the frontier, but because someone won't use a name they want. The funny thing, you can walk into a bar as a man and some guy will mockingly call you Susan. There's a song about it, A Boy Named Sue. Johnny Cash, y'all know that song, right? He says his dad named him Sue, and he would get into fights all the time. They'd pick on him. They'd beat him up. So one day he tracked down his dad. He got into a fight, and then his dad said, I knew I couldn't be there for you to make you strong, and so I named you Sue so that you'd be forced to fight your way to becoming tough and strong. And then he says, now I understand. So if I ever have a son, I'm going to name him Bill or George or Mike or anything but Sue. Ha. And that's the joke. It's kind of funny, right? It used to be. That was the butt of the joke of one of the most famous songs of all time, at least in our culture. Johnny Cash, A Boy Named Sue. You know the song? A Boy Named Sue. But now you have people begging to be called these things. It's an inversion. It used to be that being called Sue would make people want to pick on you. And, I'm not a fan of that. They don't pick on somebody because they got a goofy name or whatever, a name you think is goofy. But just think about the inversion of our culture. And that is to say, I think our parents were too nice to us. I think our parents were living in luxury and to a greater degree than their parents. And so they transferred that luxury and wealth to us and consistently tried to shield us from the harsh realities of the world. Maybe it was because the people who saw war didn't want their children to see the horrifying things they did, and for good reason. So they shielded their children, who shielded their children, who shielded their children, and now the children cry because Nana won't call us a name we want. You want to be called a name? Here's what happens. Someone like me says, dude, I don't care. I'll call you whatever you want. Why? I mean, look, I've seen grisly things in my life. I have seen horrible things. I have seen war and conflict, famine. I have seen, I should calm down a little bit. I have seen urban conflict and civil war. I have seen drought, and I have seen starving people. I've seen radioactive dead zones, Fukushima. So the last thing I care about is being bothered by what you want to call yourself. I really don't care. But that's just it. Then we don't uphold a standard. And then you get a weaker and weaker generation because you need a strong father figure to say, look, this is the bare minimum. This is the bottom line for what we will accept. And there isn't one anymore. Lower middle class intellectuals, mommies on Valium so ineffectual. The parents don't care. They're not paying attention. They're just getting by. Their kids are in institutionalized learning facilities, as I said in my earlier segment. And you end up with young women crying for 2 minutes because grandma won't just call you Mike. Is that it? Okay. Then give China 10 years and we lost the war. Give Russia 10 years and there won't be a Ukraine. Because China and Russia are doing the exact opposite. They're whipping their young people into shape. They're making their young men strong. They are banning this kind of content and flooding it into our social media with TikTok. Yeah, we're banned from TikTok over at Timcast. I'm not allowed. Don't ask me why. Don't know. Many people were like, Tim, just make a new account. And I'm like, I guess. I'll tell you what. Okay, well, maybe I should get our social media team to start working on that. And we'll get back on TikTok, or at least TikTok will personally get on it. I was on it briefly once, but I think it's fake. And they banned Timcast IRL, and they didn't give us a reason. Probably because the message we spread to Americans is personal responsibility. And the message they want spread in this country is degradation and degeneration and degeneracy. So give it 10 years. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up in a few minutes. Stick around and I'll see you all shortly.